Conceived in rape, adopted and loved, God has a purpose for every person, despite the circumstances. Welcome to Freedom Alive. Despite the Supreme Court's decision, radical abortion proponents continue to fight for the right to kill unborn children, and many use the reason of rape to argue that abortion should remain accessible. But today's guest, Ryan Bomberger, is a living testimony that it's not an excuse. In fact, Ryan is with us today because he was rescued from the violence of abortion by his birth mom's courageous decision. I'm joined again by co-host Matt Staver. And Matt, statistics reveal the truth about this issue. Rape accounts for 0.4% of all abortions, less than 1%. But despite this horrible circumstance of conception, the Bible is clear that every human child is created in the image of God and has great worth.
It's always the issue of rape or incest, which is, rape within the family, if you will, that is used as an excuse to have abortion. But just because you have a bad circumstance that begins this person's life does not mean that you overcome a bad circumstance with even a worse decision, and that is to take the unborn life. Life always overcomes death. Life always overcomes those tragedies. And I have a personal story in my own family where I'll share with Ryan when we talk to him as well. So I understand what Ryan is going to convey to us, that he is a precious child of God. Everyone who is conceived, no matter of the circumstances or how that person was conceived, is a precious, unique individual, a child of God. And no matter how bad the circumstances around that conception may be, God can overcome and heal those circumstances. Life always is the choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A miraculous story, but our Freedom Alert is next.
Minority groups defend Kentucky Constitution that protects life. I'm Matt Staver, co-host of Freedom Alive. Liberty Counsel filed an amicus brief at the Kentucky Supreme Court on behalf of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference and the Frederick Douglass Foundation. This is in defense of the state's numerous pro-life laws that are supported by the Kentucky Constitution. These minority communities have been directly targeted by abortion and mostly by Planned Parenthood's abortion clinics in Black and Hispanic neighborhoods. Planned Parenthood intentionally locates 86% of its abortion facilities in or near minority neighborhoods in the United States in the counties with the most abortions. Planned Parenthood's largest abortion facility in America is in the middle of a Black and Hispanic neighborhood within walking distance of a nearby school. It is time to end the dark, racist, eugenic history of abortion.
Up next, Matt's interview with Ryan Bomberger.
Well, our very special guest is Ryan Bomberger. He is the co-founder, along with his wife Bethany, of the Radiance Foundation. Welcome to Freedom Alive, Ryan.
Hey, it's good to be here with you.
Ryan, you have an amazing story about how you were conceived in rape, and yet you're alive. It's the issue of rape that is always the excuse that people use why you should have abortion. Tell us about your experience, and I want to talk about what's happening in the Black community in the issue of the sanctity of human life with adoption, and address some of these issues that we hear with regards to abortion.
Absolutely. I thank God first and foremost for just rescuing and redeeming me, and having a birth mom who was courageous enough not only to go through 9 months of a traumatic pregnancy, but also gave me just the gift of adoption. So I grew up in a tiny little family, your typical American family of 15. I have 6 brothers, I have 6 sisters, 10 of us were adopted, 10 of us written off by the world, that we would be unwanted and unloved, which is, basically the DNA of the abortion industry. And it's such a lie. Grew up in a family of 15 and loved like crazy. And now happily married to the love of my life, Bethany, and we have 4 kiddos, 2 of whom were also adopted. But adoption really defined my entire journey. It's why our organization, the Radiance Foundation, is so passionate about adoption. But my siblings and I, many of us adopted out of the foster care system, disprove this nonsense of, the myth of the unwanted child. And also this increasing rhetoric that somehow says that children in the foster care system, instead of having to face the difficulties that they're facing, would be better off dead. None of us were better off dead. We were all better off loved.
That's an incredible scenario that we hear more often than we should, and that is that these children that are in the foster parenting, foster care situation, it would have been better that they would have been aborted and not be alive. The fact of the matter is, I'm sure that they never take a poll or ask those children that are living in the foster care system or people who have gone through the foster care system whether they agree with that proposition.
Right.
I think what you are an example of is that no matter the trauma, no matter the tragedy, life always overcomes death, always overcomes the trauma. That trauma, as bad as it is temporary, but life can go on not only through our lifetime, but through eternal life, through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Right. And as Christians, we have to think about this, that the circumstances of our conception don't change the condition of our worth.
Yeah.
We have equal and inherent worth, not from man, woman, or governmental institution, but from God. Psalm 139 doesn't have the asterisk, oh, you're fearfully and wonderfully made if you were humanly planned. Many of us were not humanly planned, but we're all part of God's divine plan. And so I thank God that my birth mom's courageous decision will have reverberations for generations. And you see it in my family, and you see it in the work that my family does through our ministry. And I mean, those are incredible reverberations that she never could have imagined.
Yeah.
But I believe someone had to have spoken life and hope into her. And that's what we should be doing as Christians, not just speaking it, but also being that hope and that life and that support for those facing the unplanned.
Well, imagine how many Ryan Bombergers are not alive today.
Yeah.
You might
Way
not
too
be
many.
here if your mom had made a different choice. But out of that tragedy, life was born. You were raised in a family of 15, a multiracial family. And as a result of that, you're now married to Bethany, and the two of you co-founded the Radiance Foundation, which is advocating adoption, what you have had a personal experience with. None of that would have happened had your mom made this decision long ago.
Right. Or my parents, Henry and Andrea Bomberger, if they hadn't, heeded the call to love those that the world would so easily discard. I mean, my mom was placed in a children's home for 1 year as a 5-year-old child. Her father was an alcoholic. And that's actually where her heart for adoption began. When she was placed for that 1 year's time in that home, her heart broke over those who didn't have a mom and a dad to come visit them. And so that's where her heart for adoption began. And so had I not been adopted and loved like crazy by my parents, I wouldn't have this perspective. I wouldn't have the life that I had. And so it was my birth mom's courage, and it was the dedication, devotion, and the faith of my parents that made me into the person that I am today.
Tell us, Ryan, about the Radiance Foundation. What does it do, and how can people get involved in what it does? And how can people there's lots of people watching this program that are interested in adoption, or they know somebody who's interested in adoption. We want to talk about that in a few moments, but give us some background about the Radiance Foundation and what it does in its ministry across the country and around the world.
Sure. My wife, Bethany, and I started the Radiance Foundation back in 2009, and it was kind of a crazy sort of leap, kind of a Peter getting out of the boat moment and stepping out onto that water, because it was terrifying. My wife was a teacher for 13 years. I worked as a creative director for the same amount of years in the ad agency world, and we felt so compelled to be able to tackle these culture-shaping issues from a biblical perspective, a fact-based, faith-filled biblical perspective. And so we started the Radiance Foundation to be able to illuminate, educate, and motivate. We illuminate that every human life is God-given purpose. We educate people on a myriad of these culture-shaping issues, and then we motivate people to put that knowledge and that faith into action. So that translates into ad campaigns, billboard campaigns that we've done nationwide, over 600 billboards. It translates into our weekly op-eds in Christian Post and Town Hall and several other news outlets. It translates into our messaging campaigns and our collaborations with pro-family, pro-life, pro-liberty organizations all across the country. And it also translates into a lot of our extensive research when Friend of the Court briefs in some of these crazy cases, like in the state of Pennsylvania, where pro-abortion groups are saying that it's racist to not fund more abortions in the Black community. So we're just all about illuminating that every human life has God-given purpose and finding different means in which to do that illumination.
With regards to adoption, I know in my own staff at Liberty Counsel, we have a family that adopted, but it took them several years to do it. And it wasn't an easy process. We were just at a dinner the other night with someone who has been trying to go through the adoption process for 4 years. Why does it take so long, and how can we reform the adoption system to make things operate quicker and more efficiently?
Yes, adoption is a different narrative for many people. Like for us, for instance, I adopted my oldest daughter, who's actually my wife's biological daughter, and that's a whole story in and of itself. My wife was a single woman as a teacher who faced an unplanned pregnancy and rejected the violence of abortion. And that girl's name is Radiance, and that's the reason for the name of our organization. So I adopted her when she was 6, and we also adopted our youngest son, Justice. Now, Justice, that actually only took us months. So, but everybody has a different sort of story. We actually knew the family. In fact, we're close friends with the family that he is from. But for some, it's years. In fact, we have something called the Adopted in Love Fund. It's the Henry and Andrea Bomberger Adopted in Love Fund. And currently, we're working with the family. It's been a year, and they're still waiting for a match. Part of the main reason for these long waits is because our country slaughters 1 million children. In the last reported year, 930,160 precious human lives aborted. And so when there are so many children being killed and then a lot of couples wanting to adopt, well, they're being killed. And that's why there are often long wait times. Also, the process itself, which is very different than abortion, because abortion takes nothing. To kill a human being takes virtually nothing. It takes a few $100s, maybe a few $1,000s, and that's the end of it. But adoption is an involved process. You got your home studies. You got to make sure that the family is a suitable family. But you also have a lot of politics involved. I get so many broken-hearted parents, prospective parents, who have been disallowed from adopting because of the color of their skin. Because you've got this whole critical race theory and anti-racism propaganda seeping into the child welfare system here, to where they're demanding that you have to be the same color in order to love a child, which is nonsense. And that's the reason why a lot of children end up languishing, particularly black and brown children, in the foster care system, because they center things on kinship care, which often fails, instead of allowing adoption. So that's another reason why there are longer waits for adoption. We have to reform the system. Obviously, the foster care system, as with every human system, is broken. But there needs to be reform with adoption. The government is funding death all over the place. It's $633 million to Planned Parenthood on an annual basis, but very little funding for those who actually want to sustain and nurture life.
So you have black and brown babies that are needing adoption, but sometimes there are impediments to having them adopted because the critical race theory idea is, well, that black baby can only go with a black family, and that brown baby can only go with a brown family, and not with another mixed race family, like you grew up in a mixed race family.
Right. I mean, white, black, we were mixed. I'm mixed. Native American, Vietnamese. I mean, we were definitely a beautiful mixture, able, disabled. But you have this mentality now that somehow, if you're a black or brown child, that you have to have a black or brown parent, which is nonsense. And if you poll children in the foster care system, they will not tell you, you know what, I'm going to wait here, I'm going to languish here longer because, I just want somebody my same color. No, they want a mom and a dad to love them. They need permanence. And so much of this stuff has been politicized. It's been racialized. And I've written about this for years and years, and it's actually getting worse. Bethany Christian Services, one of the nation's largest adoption child welfare agencies, has now declared basically that it's dangerous to put a black child in a white home, but that same evangelical organization now places children in same-sex homes.
What about other crisis pregnancy centers? There's a lot of crisis pregnancy centers. I would assume that people could connect with some of those and perhaps find individuals that they might be compatible with to pursue the adoption process?
Yes, and part of this too is equipping our nation's 2,700 pregnancy care centers and understanding and learning how to convey the beauty of adoption. And our organization has worked with hundreds over the years, and there are some who do it so well. And this is something that there's training that needs to that needs to happen so that people can understand that. But yes, that is a source, because there are two alternatives to the violence of abortion: parenting, and what my good friend from Peggy Hartshorn of Heartbeat International calls a powerful parenting decision, which is adoption. And so, yes, pregnancy centers also help people and guide them through, counsel them for adoption. And so that's also a possibility. And increasingly so, of course, in this, post-Roe America. And these pregnancy centers have to be that resource in enabling expectant parents to understand what their options are. Open adoption, which are, predominantly, that's where there's a relationship between the parent, the birth parents, and the adoptive family and the adoptee. Those are the predominant types of adoption. And so an expectant parent doesn't ever have to wonder, whatever happened to my child? They don't have to ask the questions, what if, where are they? How are they doing? Because they can have that continued relationship. And that's a powerful dynamic. And it's something that we do encourage. Not every adoption can be open, but there are so many more options. And I'm so grateful for pregnancy centers for actually communicating those life-affirming options.
I want to talk about Roe and the issue of abortion targeting the Black and brown and other minority communities in a moment. But going back to what you said about 900,000 to 1 million abortions a year, someone might say, well, if you had all those children born, they would be languishing in the foster care system. But what you're saying is there's so much demand for people who want to adopt. Would there be so many people languishing in the foster care system if you didn't have adoption?
Well, people are conflating things. They think if there are less abortions, all of a sudden there are more children going into the foster care system. That's not how it works. Foster care is there because of abuse and neglect. And a lot of the children who go into the foster care system are actually planned children. So there is this myth that somehow this is some sort of pipeline, less abortion, more in the foster care system. You can look at the trend of kids going into the foster care system over the years. And even during the height of, the most amount of abortions in the United States during the 90s, also had the highest numbers of children in the foster care system. And it changes. There's not a direct correlation. So I want to kind of dismantle that a little bit for people who think, well, no abortion, then everyone's in the foster care system. That's not true. What ends up happening is there are better reporting systems that are in place to protect these children. That's what foster care is supposed to be, a temporary place of rescue for kids experiencing abuse and neglect. And with the opioid crisis, which increases the numbers of children in the foster care system. But I will say, as a Christian, the church has to wake up. There should be no children waiting and languishing in foster care. Out of the 120,000 that are available for adoption a year, about 55 to 60,000 are adopted. We have to do better than that. I mean, if only one family in 17% of conservative evangelical churches across the country adopted, one family in 17% of churches, we would wipe out the list of children waiting to be adopted.
Wow.
Those children would have a forever home. That's how attainable it is. So when people say if we don't kill these children, then they're just going to languish in foster care, that's a false choice. No, what we do is, as a nation, as Christians, we step up and we rescue the widows and the orphans. We are there to be that support.
That's an incredible statistic. One family in just 17% of the Christian evangelical churches, and all of these children would be cared for. Amazing. Where were you and what did you experience on June 24, 2022, when the Dobbs decision overturned the Roe and Casey abortion decisions?
Man, Matt, I was actually right here in my office. I was in another portion of our offices here at the Radiance Foundation, and I got a phone call. For weeks I've been on Supreme Court or what is the website for that? SCOTUS blog. And I was constantly refreshing. Well, on this day I was doing other work, and all of a sudden I get a call. My wife's on the other end, and she's just weeping. She's like, it happened. I didn't know what she was talking about. She goes, Roe has been overturned, and she's crying, and then I'm crying. It was such a powerful day, and it was such an encouragement to my soul, because this is a hard fight, and it's easy to want to give up. But giving up means that we don't save and rescue those that God intended to be in these beautiful timelines, in these beautiful families, and unleashing purpose.
So well said. I mean, this was around for decades, nearly 5 decades, 49 plus years.
Yeah.
And there had been so many different disappointments, so many people prayed, so many people worked. There were ups and downs, cycles of victories, cycles of defeats, and it was easy to give up. But by persistence in prayer and continuing to march forward, amazingly, this miracle occurred. And of course, the battle is far from over because Congress wants to enforce this abortion back on the states. Again, some members of Congress do, not all. And then the battle is on the state level as well.
Right.
We filed a brief at the U.S. Supreme Court that focused on abortion in its history, its eugenic and racist history. It is the most racist, eugenic proposition that we could possibly imagine. So this comment that someone said earlier that you need to have abortion because if you don't, it's racist. No, it's racist to have abortion because abortion clinics, 86% of those Planned Parenthood abortion clinics are in black and brown neighborhoods, and they're there for a reason, and they've always been there for a reason, and that is to eliminate the black and brown population.
Planned Parenthood, in an email last year during COVID, said black people are our base. Yes, they are. I mean, they're the main reason. They're your main target. And what is? I mean, more black lives are killed in 2 weeks than the KKK killed in an entire century. I mean,
it's the leading cause of death within the black community.
It is. Number one cause of death outnumbers the top, the leading 15 causes of death combined. And people want to say Black Lives Matter, Black Lives. Yeah, they matter in and out of the womb. And Planned Parenthood today calls itself an anti-racist organization, which just shows you just the fraud of the whole anti-racism movement. Planned Parenthood is the leading killer of black lives. How in the world is an anti-racist organization? 360 black lives are killed by Planned Parenthood every single day, Matt.
And that's just Planned Parenthood. That's not counting all the abortion clinics, but that's just Planned Parenthood alone.
Exactly. I mean, there are so many parallels. It's unbelievable. Both, 7-2 decisions. Dred Scott, 7-2. You're not human enough. Roe v. Wade, 7-2. You're not human enough. The Constitution doesn't protect you. So I'm glad that the Supreme Court finally undid a supremely wrong ruling, both in Dred Scott and, of course, in Roe v. Wade with the Dobbs decision.
It all goes back to a worldview, and the worldview is one where God is the creator, and every person is endowed by our creator with certain inalienable rights. Every person is endowed by God with certain dignity, is inherently valuable, versus without God, and that is human beings are expendable based upon our desire, our pleasure, our purpose, and other weaker human beings, those that have no defense mechanism in the womb, they can be expended. And that's the different clash between good and evil. That's the different clash here that we see with the clash of worldviews.
Right. I mean, if you could sum it up in the phrase, property then, property now. It's the same. It's the same wrong, just a different century.
Ryan, in the closing moments that we have, what are some of the final encouraging and other kinds of directives that you want to leave with our viewers?
Well, don't give up. I mean, God is a God Romans 8:37 talks about how we are overcomers. So it's very easy to get bogged down with the fake news all around us. It's easy to get bogged down by Christians who don't have a biblical worldview and frustrate us. And we wonder, why can't they see what we're seeing? But never give up. Keep speaking that truth in love and, in my opinion, a little bit of sarcasm, and just keep trying to break through the cultural noise. The Radiance Foundation is trying to do that through our work. So you can find out what we do at radiance.life. Our Adopted and Loved initiative, you go to adoptedandloved.com. It's our initiative that just educates about adoption, celebrates adoption, also gives resources and grants to families seeking to adopt. There are so many ways that we can break through this noise and break through so much of this propaganda. We can't give up, because the moment we give up, it was like the victory was just a second away, just a step away. So I just want to encourage you, just keep on speaking life, keep on speaking truth, keep on being that truth to those around you.
Well, Ryan, thank you for joining us. Ryan Bomberger, along with his wife, Bethany, co-founders of the Radiance Foundation. God bless.
Thanks so much.
Matt, another example of Genesis 50:20, the theme verse, it seems, of Freedom Alive, right? What the enemy intends for evil, God uses for good And what an amazing story.
Yeah,
with
the
Ryan.
beginning of Ryan's life was traumatic with his mother being raped. That's obviously a traumatic experience, but she chose life. As a result, he was raised in a multiracial family that also had people of different kinds of abilities or other kinds of impediments, restrictions, challenges. And as a result, now he marries a woman who also conceived out of wedlock but made the right decision to keep her child. He adopts her, names her Radiance, and then the two found an organization that promotes adoption called the Radiance Foundation. I mean, you have to
completely
create
improbable.
that story almost as though it's fictitious, and yet this is God's design. And this is just one person. God has a design and a purpose for you, no matter how much experience of trauma or depression or disappointment that you may experience in your life. God has a purpose for you greater than you can imagine, ask, or think.
How about the dispelling the myth? I loved his words, Ryan's words. None of us are better off dead.
Yeah.
We're all better off loved.
Yeah. So powerful. And he's living that as a living, breathing person who experienced
100% true with all of us.
Yeah. He's gone through the foster system. He's gone through the adoption system. He's adopted himself children. An incredible ministry, but it's an incredible story that God wrote from the very beginning.
I also loved his point about families and churches. So those of you at home, the role that we can play, and our good friend John Stemberger, right? The idea that he's talked about in the aftermath of Roe v. Wade, which is, what if every church in America adopted a crisis pro-life pregnancy center as one of your mission projects, right? How simple and how easy would that be? And what an impact would that be around the area of adoption?
Well, one of the things he also said that was amazing is that if just one family in 17% of all the evangelical Christian churches in the country, just one family in 17% of all those chose to adopt or be a foster parent, there would be no children in the foster care system. Amazing.
What is completely improbable to us, so easy to God. He calls all of us to get involved, take steps through your church, through your family. This is such a privilege to be able to bring stories like Ryan's to you through Freedom Alive. We love doing this. In closing, remember Galatians 5, verse 1, which says, "It was for freedom that Christ set us free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to a yoke of slavery." Our freedom is a gift from our Creator. We must never forget that and always protect it. So join us here next time, where you will hear victories as well as ways you can stand up for your priceless freedom. Join us again for Freedom Alive.